Don't nobody believe nothing these days. Which is why I haven't told nobody the story I'm about to tell you. And the truth is, you probably ain't gonna believe it either. You're gonna think I'm lying, or I'm losing it, but I'm telling you, this story is true. It happened to me. Really. It did. It so did. It's so hard to say. Sean's dead. Sean's dead. Sean's dead. The rules weren't meant to be broken. They were meant for the broken to follow. Rule number 1, no crime. Don't. No matter what, don't. Rule number 2, snitching. Don't. No matter what, don't. Rule number 3, revenge. If someone you love gets killed, find the person who killed them, and you kill them. This brings me to Carlson Riggs. The best thing he ever did for Sean was teach him how to do a penny drop. The worst thing he ever did for him was shoot him. The plan was to wait for Riggs in front of his building. I'd hit the buzzer, he'd come down, then I'd pull my shirt over my mouth and nose, and then I'd do it. At the elevator, I reached out and pushed the button. A guy got on. My stomach jumped to my chest, or my chest fell to my stomach, or both. I knew him. Buck? I stumbled backward. I couldn't believe it. But I stuttered, you thought I was dead. Straight up. Buck looked at me, noticing the panic, and softly said, I am. When 15-year-old Will Holloman's brother Sean is shot and killed, Will decides to follow neighborhood rules, to take revenge. This award-winning novel takes place during a 60-second elevator ride. The journey from Will's apartment to the street is filled with ghosts from his past. Literally. At each floor, a new victim of gun violence joins the conversation to sway Will's decision. With one floor to go, will the final ghost convince Will to take revenge or persuade him towards forgiveness? Let's have the reader decide. A Long Way Down by Jason Reynolds. The elevator door began closing. I exhaled, happy. We were almost there. One floor to go. But just before the door shut, 4 fingers slipped in, just barely catching it, and it began to open again. Him. Sean? He stepped into the smoky box wearing the same thing that he wore the night before. The blue jeans, the t-shirt, gold chain, but not his alive outfit, his dead one, the one that came with a blood stain. Everybody was so happy to see him. Sean, Buck yelled, reaching out for him. They slapped hands. Buck fiddled with the clasp on his chain and moved it towards the back. Sean looked at Danny. Look at you, she said, taking her hand and spinning her around. Uncle Mark gave him a light jab to the ribs. Big man, he said proudly. All the unalive, the undead, lined up against the wall, puffing their cigs, smiling as Sean finally faced me. I looked at Sean. looked at me. "Sean," I said, but nothing. I repeated, "Sean," nothing. I stepped toward him, hugged him, and he didn't hug me back. Just stood there like an awkward middle drawer of a man. I asked him, why aren't you saying anything to me? Why are you ignoring me?" But still, nothing. Not a word. Not even a smile. I told him about the drawer, about the gun, that I did what he told me, what Buck told him, what our grandfather told our father, what our uncle told our dad. I followed the rules. At least the first two, anyway. I hadn't cried, and I hadn't snitched. I explained that I was on my way to take care of his killing, to follow through on the third rule. I told him I knew it was Riggs, and then I told him I thought it was Riggs, and then I told him I knew it was Riggs. I confessed that I was scared, and I needed to know if I was doing the right thing, but the rules are the rules, right? 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 Right, Sean? I was breaking down. Tears were coming, and I did what I could to hold them back. I took my eyes off of Sean, hoping that I could fight the crying. But everywhere else was everyone else. Cigarettes glowing like a bunch of L buttons. I looked back at Sean. Tears now pouring from his eyes as he softly snotted and hiccuped like a little kid. Tears pouring from his face, tears pouring from his face, tears pouring from his face. "I thought you said no crying, Sean," I said, voice cracking, but one tear bursting free. But only one, so it didn't count. No crying, no crying, no crying, no crying. And even though his face was wet with tears, he wasn't supposed to cry. I couldn't see him as anything less than my brother. My favorite. My only. There was this sound, like whatever makes an elevator work, like cables and clogs or grinding metal on metal, like a machine, like moaning, but coming from the mouth, from the belly of Sean. He never said anything to me, which just made that painful, piercing sound. As suddenly, the elevator came to a stop. There was a moment before the door opened, and we all just stood there. Sickening smoke, thickening, crowded in this cell, in this coffin, this elevator, quiet. I looked around, only seeing the orange glow of 5 cigarettes piercing through the sheet of smoke like headlights in a heavy fog. Only 5. Sean had lit one and became invisible in the cloud. And I felt like the cigarette for me was burning in my stomach, filling me with this stinging fire. I want out. The door opened slowly, the cloud of smoke rushing out behind it. I caught my breath. I looked back as Danny, Buck, Uncle Mark, Pop, and Frick, and Sean right behind it. The L button was no longer lit. I stood alone in the empty box, face tight from dried tears, jeans soggy, and a loaded gun tucked in my waistband. Sean turned back toward me. His eyes, they were dull from death, but shining from tears, and finally spoke to me. Just 2 words, like a joke that he had been saving. You coming?